My name is Eudora. I'm 68 years old and I live alone in St. Paul, Minnesota. Since my husband left 11 years ago, this house has become too big and yet, small for so many memories. I worked as a teacher for 4 decades, and with every check that came in, I did my best to ensure a comfortable future, not only for me, but especially for my son. But tell me something. How does a mother become invisible to her own child? And you don't even notice? How can a gesture of love turn into an invisible collar that binds you for years? If you've ever asked yourself this question or felt this pain, then you know what I'm talking about. You feel that something is not right, but you are still there, paying bills, financing dreams that are not yours, just to maintain an illusion of family. Today, I'm going to tell you the day everything changed. The day my phone rang, and on the other end of the line, my son was desperate. But it was too late, because before any blocking on the cards, I had already blocked something inside me, and it was there that my freedom began. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. No one is born strong. We become. And in my case, it was necessary to be humiliated in silence many times until I understood that sometimes to love is also to know how to withdraw. I'll never forget the day my phone rang, and on the other end was my son, nervous, his voice cracking. They were in an elegant restaurant in Edina, with Dana's mother, Woody, everything carefully set up to impress. But when it was time to pay, none of the cards went through. None. Neither his, nor Dennis, nor that additional one they carried for years in my name. The waiter, embarrassed, "What? We said she'll not call up tonight." Dennis' mother, with wide eyes, and their pride running down the white tablecloth. And when they called me for help, for the first time I was silent, a silence that said it all. No. If this story touches your heart as it touched mine, I beg you, stay with me until the end. Let me tell you. And if at any time you feel that this pain is also yours, leave a like, subscribe. This isn't about numbers. It's about knowing that I am not alone. Because when we share the pain, it weighs less. I live in St. Anthony Park, a quiet neighborhood here in St. Paul, one of those where the old trees cast a shadow, even in my thoughts. My house has 3 rooms, but only one is actually inhabited. The others carry the silence of those who have left. My husband, my grandchildren who hardly come, and, in a way, even my son. I wake up early, even without obligation. I cook just for myself, always in small portions, as if that would soften the emptiness of the table. And sometimes I talk to myself to keep the memory moving, as if training the soul not to forget to feel. I have a wooden box in the back of my closet. Inside, there are the letters that Harold wrote to me when he was alive. He was always good with words. He called me my port on stormy days. When he left, I continued to be a port, but no one else docked. Ryan, my son, was my reason to follow. He was so small when his father died. I remember him sitting on the couch with his feet not even reaching the floor, asking why Daddy didn't come back. And I swore there that I would do everything so that he would never feel the absence of support. And I did. Lukau. Auto Peptinachis Katanaquais. I paid for his studies in Chicago. I worked late for years, gave private lessons, sold a collection of my mother's porcelain when he needed to do an unpaid internship. I never hesitated, because it was love. Winashtios. Love that does not ask for a receipt. When he met Dana, I made an effort to like her. She was a nice girl, one of those who always smile with their teeth showing, but her eyes smiled less. Still, no. I opened the house. No, Eudora. I helped with the wedding, bought her dress, made sure it was a beautiful party. I wanted Ryan to be happy, and at first, he seemed to be. I felt that he still saw me, but the requests began to change tone. First, it was a help for a birthday present, then, an additional card just for emergencies. After that, the emergencies started to have a name, address, and a certain date. Travel, merely done, on a due. Car installments, dinners, app subscriptions, and everything being debited from my card. When I questioned, no, Dana would tell me, oh, Eudora, Nephilis, you're a blessing. Then, well, get it right. And I believed it, because she said it sweetly. Well, she knew how to do it. There was a year when they didn't even invite me to my granddaughter's birthday. They said it was only for the schoolmates. The next day, I saw the photos on Instagram. A beautiful hall, castle decor, and her parents laughing, toasting, posing. No, I was not called. But the payment, it was on my statement. Dana had used my card. He said he forgot to warn him, and I swallowed it. I swallowed a lot. I swallowed it until I realized that they only called me to solve problems. Mom, has the limit fallen? Eudora, no. Can you anticipate the amount of the invoice? Is there a way to transfer it today? And I said, yes. Always, yes. Because we say yes, hoping that one day someone will say, thank you for everything. Mom, you are the foundation of our life. But that day never came. There was a night when I sat in the armchair in the living room and stared at Ryan's graduation picture frame. He was a handsome boy, with eyes shining with hope. And I wondered, where did he start to see me as a walking bank account? When did I stop being a mother and become a luxury sponsor? It makes me feel a lump in my throat to tell you that, because there's something worse than being used. It's being forgotten in the process, as if his presence was useful, but his existence dispensable. When you harm. No. Sometimes I wonder how many women like me there are out there. Women who gave everything, who held the bar of a house, who swallowed sorrows with cold coffee, and today they live remembered only in the hour of pinch. If you've ever felt this, if you've experienced something similar, comment below. Write I believe, or I've lived it. Because when we find ourselves in pain, it doesn't weigh so much. And maybe together I'll get this show. And turtle good. We will understand that there is still time to turn this key. But even with all these signs, even with the omissions, the forgetfulness, the cards used without warning, I still hadn't reacted. I thought it was normal. I did not know how. That every mother did that every child was like that. I convinced myself that it was love. But that night, something different happened. Something I wasn't ready to hear yet, but it pulled me out of the illusion like a slap in the dark. Do you want to know what it was that she said? So, just wait to listen, because to this day, when I remember that phrase, my heart still burns. At first, it was easy to ignore. I told myself that it was the rush of life, that young people nowadays live full of commitments, that the world is different. But when the phone stopped ringing frequently, and when the messages became short, dry, only asking about values or salaries, something inside me began to silence in another way. It wasn't that silence of the empty house. It was a deeper, crueler silence. That of no longer being remembered as a person. Ryan only came to me when he needed something. Dana didn't even pretend to be sympathetic anymore. She only showed up when the invoice went wrong or the card limit went over. The visits, when they happened, came with an appointment and time to end. It's quick. Now young. What is you now? Or Chasna talks time. Eudora. Now it's 16 young, she said, without even taking off her coat. Wow. I felt like a bank office, an emotional looting point. I, who loved that family so much, began to see myself as a weight that they carried out of obligation. There was a day, I remember well, that I called Ryan just to say that I missed him. It was on a Sunday, he answered, and said he was in the middle of a game, that he would call me later. Wow, not at first he would call me later. He never cared, not found. The next day, wow, as it he searched out wide on top where I received a message. Mom, did the money fall from the condominium account? Is that it? No, how are you? No, and sorry for yesterday. And only the direct, cold question, as if checking a transaction. It was there that I began to notice the pattern. Contact only came when it was convenient, when I could solve it. When I could afford it, I tried to talk to them. I tried? Yes, once. At a lunch that I prepared with so much care, I made chicken pot pie, Ryan's favorite since he was a boy. I sat down with them and said I was feeling sidelined, that he missed the company, the conversations, the moments. Dana smiled without looking up from her phone and replied, "Oh, Eudora, never second now. My touch can't erase it. Don't be so sensitive. Then she let out a giggle as if I were a needy old lady inventing dramas. Ryan didn't say anything. He just kept eating. That hurt me. It hurt more than innocence, because it was proof that they didn't listen to me. They didn't see me. I became a side character in the story that I helped to build myself. The worst was, last Christmas, they organized a supper at their house, invited Dana's mother, some of her colleagues from work, even neighbors I had never met. And there I was, punctual, in my best dress, the pearl necklace I had received from Harold in our 20 years of marriage. When I arrived, I realized that there was no place reserved for me at the table. The main chairs were occupied. New Omanuanswan. I ended up sitting at the end, near the wall, near some child, with a paper plate and plastic cutlery all night. No one called me to take a picture. No one asked if I wanted more wine. When I got up to leave, even before dessert, mind him, how to, no one noticed. Not a go with God. Nor did you get home well. One thing. The next day, what? I saw the photos on social media. Smiles, toasts, hugs, and I was there in the background. What? Almost out of frame. What? Cut by someone's arm. It was after that night that the penny began to drop more strongly. I was no longer part of the family. I was an invisible support, a name on the card. No, thus, a scheduled deposit. And even so, I found myself justifying it once again. They're busy. They're young. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it was not an exaggeration. It was contempt disguised as routine, indifference camouflaged as modernity. That's it. This does not hide for long. I started sleeping badly, waking up in the middle of the night with a tight chest, a small heart, and cut them, and a terrible data one, a small heart, and in the early mornings, when everything is silent, the truth usually screams. Do you know what my fear was? It wasn't being alone. I had been living alone for years. The fear was to realize that I was not needed, that I only made a difference in their lives as long as I was good for something. And when that was over, what's left of me for them? But even with all this, I still hadn't done anything. I had not yet reacted, because inside us there is this silly hope that one day they will realize, that they will apologize, that they will remember our value. But before the request for forgiveness, something much worse came. Do you believe that a single sentence can change everything? Then listen to what happened at night. Because when I heard what she said, I knew there was no turning back. It was a Wednesday like any other. It was raining lightly outside, that kind of rain that seems to whisper sadness in the windows. I had invited 2 old friends from Minneapolis over for coffee here at home, Nancy and Clarence, who were classmates of mine from high school, and with whom I remained close even after so many decades. It was rare to have visitors, and I wanted it to be special. I prepared walnut cookies, set the table with my hand-embroidered tablecloth. Heated the room with that lavender diffuser my grandson gave me a few years ago. Everything was simple, No, but done with the heart. Ryan and Dana were staying at home that month, one, because of a renovation of their apartment. And when they heard the movement in the kitchen, they went downstairs with two friends from work to say hello. As they said, "Oh," they came laughing, joking with each other. They didn't even notice the delicacy with which I arranged every detail of that afternoon. Still, not all. I smiled. I smiled. I made sure to serve everyone, one by one. Yeah, the cups of freshly brewed coffee that I passed through the cloth strainer. As I approached the armchair where Donna was sitting, I reached out with the cup, and it was at that moment, as if letting out a loose phrase in the middle of laughter, that she said, loudly, without shame, without weight, looking at her friends, "Well, this old woman here is only good for paying the bills." The silence that lasted for seconds, but for me, it was as if time had stopped. I, with the coffee maker still in hand, stopped halfway. Ryan laughed. He laughed as if it were just a silly joke, as if it didn't hurt, as if I wasn't there. Not to be a what? No one tried to correct, disguise, contain. The other people continued laughing too, trying to understand the context, thinking that perhaps it was an intimate game, one of those that only those who live together understand. But I understood. Yes, I understood everything. It was not a sentence said without thinking. You. That was what she really thought, and what he confirmed with his laughter. I was that to them. A source, a volunteer employee, a bench with legs. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just felt something shattering inside. It was not hatred. It was not shame, nor revolt. It was an end, a kind of revelation that turns off something inside us. Like when you realize that the house you built with love has long been occupied by strangers. Strangers who use your name, your kindness, your memories, but they no longer see you. I followed the afternoon, normally. I poured the rest of the coffee. Sat at the table with Nancy and Clarence, pretended everything was fine, but I didn't hear anything they said. My head was elsewhere. I looked at Dennis smile. What a large doubt I saw at Ryan's hand resting on the back of the couch, and saw two faces that I no longer recognized. I saw myself in the reflection of the window, a lady with trembling hands, a tired soul, and the look of someone who had just woken up from a dream too long. That night, after everyone had gone upstairs, I was alone in the kitchen. I turned off the lights, left only the sink on. I washed the cups one by one, wiping calmly. Wood. Each dish felt like a lament, a farewell to something I couldn't name. I sat down with an old notebook in my hands. I opened to the last page and started writing it down. I wrote down the phrase. I wrote down the time. I wrote down how I felt, because I knew that would be the dividing line, the before and after, while the rest of the house slept. I stayed there, numb, thinking, How Bonistia Abulyao. Remembering, feeling, wow. And something new began to be born. A force that doesn't scream, doesn't curse, doesn't break anything. A strength that is only born when pain becomes lucidity. Have you ever felt that? That exact time when the wound stops bleeding and starts to harden? When does love become self-protection? I felt it. And that morning, oh, alone in the dim light of the kitchen, I made a decision. Oh, do you want to know what I did next? So get ready. Because the silent woman that everyone underestimated was about to surprise. I spent that whole night sitting at the kitchen table, oh, with an old notebook open in front of me. It was that brown notebook with a hard cover where I used to write down the household bills, the grandchildren's birthdays, the retirement salaries. I've always been organized with my things. I knew by heart what came in and what went out. But that night, for the first time, I started to look for real, looking at it with different eyes. Wow. With the eyes of someone who woke up. I wrote down Dennis' wedding dress, $3,200. I remembered the day she chose the most expensive one in the store and gave me a tight hug, saying, "You are more of a mother to me than mine." I believed it. Then I wrote down Ryan's car, a brand new Honda that he said he needed to grow in his career. I wrote down the 3 trips to Cancun. They said they were unique opportunities. They never invited me, but the invoices came with my name. I spent pages remembering the furniture in the new apartment, the subscriptions to streaming services, the birthday party of the granddaughter I didn't attend. Each note was a punch, and the more I wrote, the more I felt that wound pulsate. It wasn't for the money. It was because of indifference, for the certainty that all this was done without an ounce of remorse. At 2:40 a.m. Huh? Lana. My hands began to tremble. Not anger. It was something else. It was the feeling that, finally, I was leaving a place where I had been kept for too long. I opened my notebook. I entered the bank's applications. One by one, I canceled the additional cards. I deleted the accesses that Ryan had to my accounts. I reset all passwords. I canceled automatic transfers. All in silence. No ad. How? No drama. Only action. When I finished, I closed the computer, got up, went to the living room window, went. The city was asleep, and I was waking up. For the first time in years, I felt my chest light. I went to the bedroom. Went. Lay down, hugged the pillow, and I slept. I slept soundly, without the weight of someone who has to support the world on his back. It was as if the floor of my house had changed, as if, finally, I had put myself at the center of my own life. No, I'm here opening my heart. Now see you, telling the story full of pieces, scars and courage. And if you're still there with me, while listening, come, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, or even I sit stuck to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you. Sometimes all we need is someone who listens to us with an open heart. And if this story is touching yours, then stay here, because now things are really starting to change. Because, you see, cutting the cards was just the beginning. What came next? What came next? No one in the family was prepared to face. Want to know what happened the next morning when he tried to use the card and found that the source ran dry? Get ready, because the phone is going to ring. And I already knew what to answer. At 9:15 in the morning, my landline rang. I already knew it would come. He was in the kitchen, with the kettle on the fire and the smell of cinnamon bread spreading through the house. I answered calmly, the dishcloth still resting on my shoulder. Why should I young? Mom. Mother. No. For God's sake. What happened? It was Ryan. His voice was trembling, panting. I see now. And then, in the background, you could hear a buzz, cutlery banging, someone saying, "Well, figure this out." It was a restaurant. For sure, he continued. Us were here at Birch Steak and Pizza Bar with Dana's mom, Coffee, and mother. New town. No cards are passing. We tried mine, Dana's, and even her add-on. Nothing. The bill was $215. People are looking. What's going on? Mom? I took a deep breath. I wiped my hand on my apron, and, in the calmest voice I've ever used in my life, I replied, the cards have been cancelled. Ryan, I decided not to play you anymore. On the other side, the silence was so heavy that it seemed that even the restaurant stopped. He did not immediately respond. I heard the sound of the napkin being tossed on the table. Then a muffled whisper. Hey, Dana. She canceled everything. That pause told me more than any speech, because, for the first time, he didn't scream. He didn't complain. He didn't try to change my mind. He just noticed. He realized that that woman he thought would be there forever, in silence, with her purse open and her smile ready, had woken up. Noon. I knew that day would come. And honestly, I'm relieved to have been in an expensive restaurant. In front of an elegant audience and an arrogant mother-in-law. What better place to unmask a castle of appearances? They spent years using me to fund this theater. That they would face the stage without me now. But, Mom, you could have warned me? No, he muttered, as if still trying to control the situation. We're here. Why you gone? The account is open. Dana is embarrassed. I've been embarrassed too. Ryan, Piley. I said, 4 years, but no one noticed. He did not answer. I heard the waiter approaching in the background, asking something. Ryan covered the phone with his hand. Dana, as I understand it, no. Tried to call from her own cell phone. Soon after, I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to make a scene, but because, for the first time, I didn't owe any explanation. I hung up, sat on the porch with my hot coffee, and stayed there. The sky was clear blue, with slow clouds, and the wind beat on the leaves of the trees, as if the world was exactly as it should be. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel guilty, and it was at that moment that I understood. Sometimes it is necessary to expose someone to their own embarrassment, so that they finally see their own ingratitude. But what I didn't know, it's just that their reaction was still going to surprise me. Want to know what Ryan did the next day? Just wait and see, because he wasn't going to accept this cut without a fight. And then the mask began to fall for good. The phone has not stopped. First, it was Ryan, calling non-stop, one call after another, as if insistence would make me give in. Then came Dana, with that fake voice of someone who tries to look calm. What new? But inside, it's boiling. And finally, Will, her mother, now Jim Simchown, Mrs. Rand, Wild, Shewa, Claudia, Nan, Naistigratham, whom I barely knew well, wanting to understand what happened. Funny, right? I spent years invisible, and suddenly, man, when the cards were blocked, everyone remembered my name, my house, my importance. Oh, their love began and ended at the credit limit. The messages arrived one after the other, with fabricated excuses. Eudora, now, chased out. It was a misunderstanding. Mom, you know I love you. Dana is very shaken. It was all a mistake. We just need to solve this now. Just today, I read each one silently, and for the first time, I didn't answer. The sound of the phone vibrating on the table caused me a strange peace. It was as if that noise reminded me that, finally, I was in control. But then the tone changed when they realized that I wasn't going to answer. The messages started to come with another type of word. Are you okay? I don't think you're thinking straight. Mom, that's not normal. Dana thinks you should seek help. You're too impulsive. And, how? Finally, the cruelest. You're unbalanced. You need to be evaluated. I read that sentence and felt a chill down my spine. Not because of what they said, but because I realized what they really thought of me. They never saw me as a woman of value. For them, I have always been a source, an account number, a name on a card. No, a resource, not a person. And when the appeal ran out, despair came. I walked around the house, and the phone kept ringing. The sound echoed in the rooms, as if the past insisted on not leaving me alone. I spent the whole morning ignoring it. I made chamomile tea, sat on the couch, looked out the window. The street was quiet. The autumn leaves piled up on the sidewalk, and I thought, they're out there, desperate, and in here, how serene. It was a new sensation, a harsh but liberating serenity. After a while, I unplugged the phone. He wanted complete silence. I went to the bedroom. Opened the drawer where I keep the old photos and pulled out an image of the little Ryan, about 8 years old, hugging me on the first day of school. Her hair messed up, her eyes full of confidence. Mommy, when I grow up, I want to take care of you. That's what he said that day. I ran my fingers over the photo and smiled. A tired smile. Because sometimes what we create with love, the world distorts with selfishness. I sat on the bed. No, it's still down. Looked at the ceiling and let the thought come. What could it be that, deep down, I was the one who taught them that they could use me? Maybe so, because every time I said okay, I taught that abuse was acceptable. Every time I was silent, I authorized disrespect. And at that moment, I understood. Whoa, boundless love is the fertile ground of ingratitude. Have you ever felt that too? That time when the heart says enough, but the head still tries to find excuses for others? If you have, stay with me until the end of this story, because what comes now will show that even silence can be a way of screaming. In the middle of the afternoon, the phone rang again, only this time I answered. I let his voice echo, cold, anxious. Mom, what are you doing? People are thinking you've lost your mind. We're worried about you. I laughed, but it was a sad laugh. Worried about me? Or with the card? I asked. He stuttered. No, and deny so and can't no stout on account. Don't talk like that. Please, you're hurting us. I took a deep breath. No. Ryan, you don't know what hurting is. Not yet. I turned it off slowly and felt a shiver. Because, deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning. That the loss of money wasn't what really terrified them. It was the loss of control. And when those who have always had power realize that it is over, the worst is yet to come. Want to know what they did after the money dried up and the pride started to boil? Wait and hear, because when they knocked on my door that afternoon, they said, "Hi." That's when the tables turned for good. Dana tried to force the door latch once again, even after Ryan said it was useless. The key was passed, and I had already decided no one else would come here uninvited. I saw it through the corner of the curtain when she went to the side window, the one that gives a direct view of my living room armchair. I was sitting there. What in Hauben? Sitting there, motionless. I am down. Hapti rewired. Sissa, with the crochet on my lap, my hands resting on the ball, and my eyes fixed on nothing. But inside, it was another story. What had bride talked to water one Chanel. It was as if I was in the process of rebirth. When her eyes met me through the glass, I saw the fury, the humiliation. How? And then came the cry. You're acting like a child. This is cruelty. Eudora. I didn't move. I didn't get up. I didn't argue. I didn't counter. I just reached out and closed the curtain gently, a straight line of fabric separating the past from the present. Outside, Lindewound, Inshadyanokau. The noise continued. They argued among themselves, raised their voices, clapped their hands, as if that would make me stand up. But inside, everything was silent, and this silence was the greatest answer I could give, because I've screamed too much in silence for the past few years. I've cried in silence. I've been wounded in silence. Now, finally, silence was my ally, not my prison. They stayed outside for almost an hour. They sat on the porch step, then walked back and forth. Ryan even sent a message saying that he was going to call the police, because that wasn't normal. I read the message and smiled. Funny how, when you stop giving in, those who have always benefited start calling you unbalanced. I was no longer the good mother, the available woman, the walking wallet. I was just I. And that, for them, was unbearable. At this point in the story, you may be wondering if I wasn't suffering, if my heart wasn't in pieces. Of course he was. I am a flesh and memory. I love Ryan with all my being. That love has never ceased to exist. But the truth is that loving doesn't mean accepting everything. And when love becomes a one-way street, it is necessary to put a wall in the middle, a wall of dignity. Do you want to know why this part of the story still moves me so much? Because it was the first time in decades that I chose myself. I chose to respect myself before pleasing. That's it. That changes everything. When Dana got tired of screaming, Ryan pulled her by the arm. I caught a glimpse as she turned around, what still angry in her eyes, and he said something like, "Let's go. This is past the limits." She hesitated, and how, still looking at the closed window. Wow. But they were. I heard footsteps coming down the balcony stairs, the sound of the car starting, and then silence returned. A silence full of meaning, because right there, at that very moment, I buried a version of myself that was too good for too long. I closed my eyes, and for a few minutes, I let the tears fall. They were not tears of sadness, but of liberation, those that clean, that unclog. And there, with the house all to myself, and the garden, I realized something that might be useful for you too. There is pain that only goes away when we stop explaining ourselves. The afternoon went by, and the sun was already hitting the living room wall differently. The golden light made the shadow of the curtain dance, and I sat there, and I began to think about what would come next. Because it's not enough to close the door. You need to know what to do with the key. Do you want to know what was the first step I took after they left? It was something simple, but that completely changed the course of my story. Just wait and see, because the next gesture I made, it was only mine, and it was beautiful. The next morning, after that heavy and necessary silence, I prepared my coffee with the same calm as always. The kettle beeped, the bread toasted just right, and the butter melted slowly over the slice. Everything seemed the same, but I was no longer the same. Because in that house, in that body, in that soul, there was now an awakened woman, and the woman who wakes up when she is wounded, when does not scream. She acts. It was there, between one sip and another, that a memory came to me. One, Dana, Hone, months ago, in one of the many conversations, crossed, uttering a phrase loaded with poison. If one day this house is ours, we can even renovate this kitchen. It's a shame she insists on staying alive so long. At the time, nice, I laughed embarrassedly. Today, nowhere. Unsichtbarlich. The phrase echoed differently. It was more than arrogance. It was a clue. I grabbed my bag, put on my shoes, and, with my head held high, left the house. I went straight to the office of Mrs. Hargrove, Leonard's Toxid, my longtime attorney, a firm woman, with a watchful eye and a direct word. When I walked into her office, I didn't have to explain much. All you had to do was sit down and say, "The time has come. How? I want to put everything in order." She listened to me attentively, now until, without interruptions. He analyzed my documents, checked the old will, reviewed each line with a precision that gave me confidence. And he went straight to the point. Let's protect what is yours. Eudora, I shall wake a. From now on, no one will lay hands on your peace anymore. We spent hours there. We closed the legal loopholes. I removed Ryan's name from all joint accounts. The emergency funds redirected and locked with layers of security. The will was remade with clear when the sewer can down. How? Firm clauses? No. One can assume. No automatic inheritance. No easy access. The property where I live now has legal protection against any attempted sale, forced donation, or improper intervention, and more. I recorded, in minutes, the history of financial abuses with dates, values, testimonies. I didn't leave any traces open. It was the first time in many years that I felt that I was taking care of myself with method, with strategy, with coldness. And this is not a lack of love. This is emotional survival. Because loving without protecting one's own soul is a slow suicide. Before leaving, Mrs. Hargrove took my hand and said, "You did right. Eudora, Nantown, considered high. The countries are monitor chakte. They didn't expect that from you. And now, they will need to deal with what they have sown." I left there with the papers in a red folder. I walked through downtown Minneapolis with the cold wind on my face, and even with trembling hands, there was steadiness in my step. It was as if each signed document was a brick in the foundation of a new version of myself, a woman who learned the hard way. That silence is only beautiful when it is not being used to erase you. And look, if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. There are a lot of people out there living quietly, thinking they're alone. And sometimes all that person needs is to know that someone else has broken up too. I returned home with the briefcase in my hands as if carrying a shield. I opened the door, hung up my coat, and put the documents in the drawer where I used to keep the Christmas presents that were never opened. It was symbolic, because this time the gift was mine, and I had given myself what in turn and so stole. But of course, the things were not going to stop there. What I didn't know is that someone was about to find out what I had done. And their reaction? Good. This part you need to listen to carefully, because not everyone knows how to lose access, and there are people who, when they are contradicted, show the worst of themselves. Want to know what Dana tried to do after she learned about the changes? Get ready, because her next move was low, hand tuned. How? Very low. When I got home that evening, still with my coat on my shoulders and the smell of the office stuck in my hair, I decided to open the old box of files that was stored in the closet in the hallway. It was where I accumulated, without much criteria, the papers of the last few years. Receipts, card bills, bank statements, deposit receipts. I have always been one to keep everything, not out of suspicion, but out of habit. And that night, something inside me said, look closely. So I sat on the living room floor, not here, with the box open in front of me, and began to sort through, sheet by sheet. There, no animal pound, between old supermarket bills and paid bills. There were small pieces of my story being told by numbers. I saw purchases that I never made. New York fashion magazines delivered monthly, more than $100 a month. A subscription to online yoga classes on a premium platform, renting foreign movies on streaming services that I didn't even know existed, and finally, nubbed on a brunch in Uptown, paid for with my card. At 11 in the morning, on a Sunday, I remember well. He was eating canned soup at home because money was tight that month. My heart was quiet. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, as if with each extract I saw, with cruel clarity, how much I was despised. It is not the expenditure itself. Oh, it is contempt disguised as convenience. Their comfort built on my resignation. Their luxury sustained by my loneliness. I kept digging through the papers and found printed emails that I had filed myself. One of them was an exchange between Donna and a friend, organizing a bachelorette party in Miami. Don't worry about the costs. My cute little mother-in-law loves to help. I read that 3 times. My cute mother-in-law loves to help. That's where a lot of people are wrong. They think kindness is stupidity, that generosity is a sign of weakness. But what they forget is that every good woman carries a strength that, when she wakes up, there's her, little more calm. And I was waking up, slowly, now, in silence, but with my eyes open. I know there are a lot of people on the other side, listening to this now. who have felt something similar. Neo. That time, when you realized they were laughing at you, not with you, who used his kindness as a bargaining chip. Or no down. If this part of my story also hit you inside, so it stays, because the most memorable moment is yet to come. And when it comes, you'll understand why sometimes what looks like weakness, it's just patience waiting for the right time. With a stack of papers in my lap, I got up, went to the drawer, and took a large envelope. I put inside all the receipts that said, without words, what my mouth never had the courage to say. It was all there, detailed, clear, pale, irrefutable. Now, I didn't just have wounds, I had proof, and that changes everything. I closed the envelope, wrote to keep with me on the front, and kept it in the red folder, along with the legal documents. Now it was no longer just about protecting what is mine. It was about leaving a record. Because if one day they try to reverse what I did, they will find the whole truth, written with numbers and dates. That night, before going to sleep, I looked around the house. Everything is the same, but I knew, wait on say y'all, could your house don't lie, but I knew there was something new in here, and it was mine. But what I didn't imagine, is that this envelope would be opened ahead of time, and the way that happened, it was the fuse of everything. Want to know who had access to it and what they tried to do? So hold on tight, because now, the story will change its tone. It was a gray Tuesday, with an icy wind that announced rain. I was finishing folding some towels in the living room when I heard the doorbell. I looked through the curtain, and there she was, Claudia, in a beige coat, hair tied in an impeccable bun, and a smile so controlled that it looked more rehearsed. In his hands, a lemon cake from those ready from the supermarket. I took a deep breath. I opened the door slowly. Hi, Eudora. Condicio. I thought about stopping by to talk, like two mature women. Her voice was sweet, but it had that tone that we immediately recognize, of someone who didn't come to listen, came to lead. Wow. I invited him in. She sat on the edge of the couch, as if she were in a job interview. She opened the cloth that covered the cake, straightened her skirt, and began. What? I heard about the confusion, and it hurt me. You know? Because I know Dana. She's intense. Yes, too sensitive sometimes, but she has a good heart. I was silent, just watching. She interpreted well. Sit down. Honest, okay? Look, Eudora. None. These things happen. Families just like that. Disagreements, misplaced words. What we need, as experienced women, is to know how to get around. Nurse have a lot of flexibility. You know that. The lady. Where is Tom? Nay. Interesting how respect appears only when they want something. I folded my hands on my lap, and she continued, Well, now, I think maybe you are going through a more sensitive, emotional phase. And that, one, sometimes He can interpret things with a weight that does not exist. Have you ever thought about it? That perhaps you are seeing things where there are none? I say this with affection. Ah, the with affection, always used by those who want to stick the knife in gently. At that moment, I understood everything. It wasn't just Dana. The root was deeper. It was an entire structure, a way of living based on appearance, manipulation, and convenience. She didn't come to defend her daughter. She came to defend the system that has always worked around her, a system where I was useful. Man, yes, but never respected. I got up slowly, wise, went to the window and looked out for a moment. The street was empty. Wow. The leaves dancing in the wind. I thought about everything I've endured in silence. Every time I annulled myself to keep the peace. How? For fear of seeming bitter. Now, I let them consume me. I turned back and stood before her. You know, Claudia. Here I was, the one who lost his mind. But now I've recovered. Whoa. She had no reaction. He smiled yellowly. I adjusted his bag on his lap and tried one last argument. I just think we shouldn't let hurts become definitive. I think so too. That's why I'm putting an end to it before this hurt kills me little by little. She got up, adjusted her coat. Well, if you change your mind, we're here. I didn't answer. I just walked to the door and closed it slowly. No anger. No rush. No guilt. I stood there for a few minutes, feeling the silence of the house spread like a hug. And then a memory took me by surprise. The day Ryan, about 7 years old, brought me flowers from the school garden, saying, to you, Mom, because you are the heart of the house. And to think that today, they try to convince me that I lost my mind. No, some memories are like little flashlights. When everything seems dark, they illuminate just enough so that we don't forget who it is. Tell me something. Do you also have a memory like that? A moment that marked you forever? Tell me in the comments. I really want to read. Sometimes your memory can be just the strength someone needs today. That night, after Claudia left, something inside me took hold for good. I was no longer dealing with a family problem. I was facing a system, and like any system that stands on top of the others, it would begin to crumble as soon as I refused to be a base. But I still didn't know that the following week, the bigger bomb was about to explode. And this time, it wouldn't be inside my house. It would be in a public place, with witnesses, and no return. Want to know where it all turned? So get ready. No, because the embarrassment that came later, not even I could imagine. The letter arrived on a Thursday, folded inside a white envelope with no logo. Just my name, handwritten in firm, elegant handwriting. When I opened it and read it, I immediately noticed the smell. One, the text was not really legal. It was a threat disguised as concern. The sender introduced himself as a longtime friend of Dana's family. One Mr. Ryan McAllister, a retired lawyer who was now dedicated, he said, to supporting families in sensitive situations when seniors begin to make decisions that could harm themselves and their loved ones. The words seemed soft, but they were sharp. No, then, they set yourself down, and I think the touches it, and nearly blood fell quality. They spoke of atypical behaviors, recent emotional imbalance, unexpected financial decisions, and, well, worst of all, mentioned a possible request for voluntary interdiction, suggesting that, as a precaution, the family could ask that I be temporarily removed from the management of my own assets for the sake of my safety and well-being. I sat on the edge of the couch with the letter in my hands and felt my heart beat slower. Not out of fear. Disgusting. The strategy now was to paint myself as crazy, as unbalanced, like a confused old woman. They were trying to turn my lucidity into a threat. But what they forgot is that those who lived as long as I did, he learned to see behind the scenes. And there it was. What in fear, mine or tea, not mine, theirs. Fear of losing control, fear of me not going back, fear of what could come next. I kept the letter in a new folder, along with copies of the statements, receipts, and emails. I started recording everything. I wrote down dates, times, saved messages, recorded calls. Every time someone called me out of concern, I registered it. Every sentence that seemed too sweet, I wrote. It was like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and the pieces came from their hands. The next morning, I called Dr. Miriam Olson Howe, a psychologist I met years ago at a lecture on grief. She was sensible, direct, and had the kindness of someone who really listens. I made an appointment for the following week and went there with all the papers. We talked for almost 2 hours. I said everything about the blocking of the cards, about dinner, about Dennis' phrase, about Claudius' visit, about the letter from that lawyer, and in the end, she looked at me with a firmness that moved me. Eudora, what you are doing is not impulse. It is protection, and it's rare to see someone your age with that clarity. She did some tests, talked some more, and handed me a document. A technical report confirming that I was in full cognitive capacity, without any sign of dementia, delirium, or instability. I kept that paper like someone who keeps a sword, because now, I had not only the truth, but the evidence. From then on, I changed the way I deal with it, not with heart, with strategy, not with tears, with silence, and not out of fear, with preparation. And you know what? It was at that moment that I understood. Sometimes the enemy is not even the person. It is the system that it represents, and that system. She had been swallowing me for years, while I smiled and offered coffee. if you've been listening to my story so far. No, no. There's a power in acknowledging one's own pain without shame. The shame has to be of the one who causes it, not of the one who feels it. That weekend, I sat on the porch with my mint tea and watched the trees sway. It was a cold wind, but it didn't bother me. Because I knew. Now I was armored. They could shout, accuse, dramatize, but I had built my shield. And this time, they weren't going to stop me with letters, blackmail, or fake smiles. But not everything we can predict. And what happened the following Sunday caught me off guard. Because when pride gets hurt, it bites. And this time, they bit badly. Want to know what it was? So, take a deep breath. Why? Because the time is coming when everything came to light. I signed my name with the black, heavy-bodied pen that Mrs. Hargrove had given me. It was one of those with a cold metal lid, which makes a firm click when closed. Each letter of my name came out clean, decisive, on this, with a firm line. I, Eudora May Holloway's 68 years old, ein retired teacher, was widowed for 11, mother of an only child, Hans Tilm. But in that role, I was not just that. I was an author of the end of a cycle, and editor of the beginning of another. The room was silent, just the sound of pen on paper. When I finished, Mrs. Hargrove took the document, reviewed it, organized the attachments, and put it all in a dark blue folder with rubber band. Ready? Now, no one touches anything of yours without going through the steel of this law. She said, now, topless, looking at me with a mixture of respect and tenderness. In the new will, I made it clear, a substantial part of my estate goes to an NGO here in Minnesota that cares for widows, elderly women who go through abandonment and exploitation. I met them in a support group a few years ago, some with worse stories than mine. Others who taught me not to be silent. It was my way of giving back. The second part goes to my sister in Detroit, Lucille. We are not intimate, but she has always been fair to me. He sent me cards at Christmas, even when no one else remembered. He called me on his father's birthday, even after 30 years of his death. She never asked me for anything. Therefore, he deserves everything. And finally, a symbolic percentage goes to Ryan. But with one condition. He can only access this amount if he proves 2 consecutive years of financial independence. No cards of mine. No deposits. No indirect access. He will have to live for it. He will have to live for it. Grow. Get back on your feet. And now, who knows? Look in the mirror and see a man. Signing that paper was like signing a goodbye, but a calm, dignified goodbye. Nay, he did not carry anger or sorrow. He carried relief, because everything I had carried for years was now there. outside of me. I left the building with the briefcase in my bag. The Minneapolis sky was clear, and a light breeze ruffled my hair. I walked to the bus stop with serenity that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if, for the first time, I had put my name at the end of the story and not let them write it for me. I knew that, at some point, Ryan would know, and perhaps he would revolt. Maybe Dana would freak out. Maybe they would try something. But, honestly, it didn't matter anymore. What I needed to do for myself was done. Only, not everything we conceal with paper. Wow. Because days later, something happened that no lawyer could have predicted. And what was stored, about to explode, came to light in the worst way. Want to know what was leaked? And who made a point of spreading it? Get ready, because there are things that only the family is capable of doing. The invitation came on a Wednesday afternoon. It was a short message, straight on my cell phone. Dana's number. Can you meet me at the Black Dog Cafe tomorrow at 11 a.m.? Alone. I want to talk. I stared at it for a few minutes, sitting in the rocking chair in the living room. As if that small screen weighed more than it looked. I took a deep breath. I knew that time would come. And I went. Black Dog is one of those low-key cafes in downtown St. Paul, Maine, tucked away between an old record store and a stationery store. A place of ordinary people, with low conversation, the smell of fresh coffee and walls covered with local art. I chose a table near the window, and at 11 a.m. sharp, she arrived. Literally, without heavy makeup, without the designer bags I used even to go to the market. He wore a gray sweater, jeans, and a look that, for the first time, was not superior. It was from someone naked, without armor, and she sat down slowly, holding the cup with both hands. I needed to see you. Look into your eyes. I want to understand how you felt. I didn't say anything right away. I only listened to her. Dana has always been good with words, but this time there was no flourish. She told of the panic in the restaurant, of people watching, of her mother leaving without saying anything. She said that now, for the first time, she felt exposed. You have always been the silent parachute, Eudora, Nam city's calm. And suddenly we fell. I kept listening, not with a grudge. Take it easy. When the soul aligns, the ear opens. She talked about how things got out of control, about how they leaned on me without realizing the line of exaggeration. We acted as if it were normal. But it wasn't. There was a long silence, one of those who seemed to decide the course of the conversation. She then asked, "Is there still time to fix it?" I took a sip of my chamomile tea and looked right into her eyes. There was no fear in me anymore, nor anger. Only truth. You can't fix what was built on top of lies. You can only start something new and based on other rules. She swallowed. Ah, I think I expected immediate forgiveness. I expected a hug. Listen, that's no. Perhaps, but what I offered was something else. Limit, and that, sometimes, is worth more than any forgiveness. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video, and sign up, and let's make this story reach those who need it. Because there are people who still think that goodness is weakness, and it is not. Dana thanked him for the conversation. He said he needed time to understand everything, and that, whoa, somehow, she was going to show that she wanted to start over. I didn't answer. No. Watch they did not cow. I only smiled slightly and left with my heart at peace. The decision was no longer mine. It was theirs. No. And this time, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. But that same night, something unexpected happened. Something that did not come from her, nor Ryan, but from someone I hadn't seen in years, and that he knew too much about my past. Want to know who reappeared and why? So hold on, because even I was floored. It was a Saturday afternoon, clear skies, sun filtering through the curtains of the living room. I was embroidering an old tablecloth, one of those that we start without haste, just to occupy our hands while our thoughts go far. The phone rang. It was Ryan's number. I didn't recognize him at first, because I hadn't heard his voice in weeks. I answered with a firm heart, without expecting anything, and on the other side came a sound I hadn't heard in a long time. His calm breathing. Wow. Mom? Oh, it's just to tell you something. His voice was low, but clean, without the hurried tone of those who want to justify, without the weight of pride. No, nor the coldness that has wounded me so many times. It was a human voice, and, for the first time, she looked like an adult. I had got a smaller apartment in Bloomington. It's not big, but it's mine. We are starting slowly. I cut the cards, canceled everything that was linked to you. Now I'm the one who pays my bills. And you know what's weirder? For the first time in years, I slept without anxiety. I closed my eyes for a second. The towel slipped from my lap, not by shock, but for relief. Because, in silence, change was happening. Oh, he continued. Wah, Dana, not here. She got a part-time job at a coffee shop. Mew. Yet he's enjoying it. Oh. She went back to wearing simple clothes. We started to make a budget together. Spreadsheet. No dawa. You know, with what comes in, what goes out. It's been hard, but it seems real. And I was there, listening with a full chest, one palm, but without bursting, because we who are mothers know that we can't celebrate too soon. We listen to the tone, the gesture, and the time between one word and another. And on that Saturday, I heard repentance, but a quiet repentance, one that doesn't ask for applause. He didn't ask for anything. There were no promises. He didn't say, "Forgive me," or "We want to go back to the way we were before," because it couldn't be like before. And he knew. Mom, I know we hurt it, and I know that you. He moved away so as not to get lost for good. And they're starting to understand. What I still don't know everything, but I'm trying. Then I said, "No, Ryan, some lessons we only learn when the ground disappears. I never wanted your fall. Nee, I sent kiln instead you are. I can't see, choose I symptoms. I did too, but it couldn't be the network anymore either." He kept quiet, and so did I. It was seconds that seemed like years. And in that pause, something new was born. It was not reconciliation. It was respect. Respect planted in dry soil, but with strong root. Sometimes silence hurts, but it also heals. Because when we stop screaming to be heard, the other needs to listen more carefully. If you're still with me here, listening to every bit of this story, stay, because I feel that the most important thing is yet to come. There are things that life only reveals when we finally stop carrying what is not ours. After the call, I hung up the phone carefully. I sat for a while, looking at the embroidery on the floor. I thought about everything I endured, all that I have shut up, everything I had to lose, so I wouldn't lose myself too. But what I didn't expect, it was what would come the following week. A letter, and not Dennis, nor Ryan, but from someone I never imagined would come back to me. Someone with an old wound. It is a truth that would change everything. Do you believe that? Even when we think we've ended the story, does it open a new page? Well, that's exactly what happened. It was Lucy who insisted. Eudora, na Anton, and then she shaklasis. We need to go out for a while. You need to see yourself outside these walls, to feel another wind, to hear another sound. Oh, and so, two ladies with more history than baggage hit the road to South Carolina. We rented a simple cottage near the beach in Folly Beach. No luxury, only balcony with hammock, knell of sea air and unhurried weather. On the very first morning, I woke up without an alarm clock, without an external or internal alarm. No commitment, no request, no requirement. Just the sound of the waves and the soft light filtering through the linen curtains. We walked barefoot on the sand, bought fruit at the local market, tasted artisanal ice cream, and laughed at silly things like white-haired teenagers. I bought a light blue dress. Light, might wire, with small flowers. I was never one to spend on clothes for myself, but there, at that moment, I wanted to, not to show, just to feel. I looked at myself in the dressing room mirror, and, for the first time in a long time, I I thought I was beautiful, not young man, not thin, beautiful as they say of a whole woman. Who knows what she has already lost, and yet walks. One afternoon we sat on the sand, the calm sea ahead, Rizzo, then so did, and Lucy, with her feet dipped in the foam, asked, Lynn, do you regret walking away from them? I was silent for a while, looking at the horizon, and then I replied, well, serissimo, I felt guilty for existing, for costing, for breathing, for taking up space. I always molded myself to fit in the pocket and hearts of others. Now, I just want to exist lightly, and if anyone wants to love me, let them love me like this. Light, no, whole and priceless. Lucy shook my hand and said nothing, because there are moments that don't ask for a word, only presence. During that week, I didn't look at statements. I didn't review the budget. No, I didn't think about a will. I thought of myself and how I wasted decades waiting to be validated by people who only knew how to use me. And I don't blame anyone else for that, because what I allowed, I was the one who let it happen. But now I know we can free ourselves, even at 68, even with a tired body, because soul has no age. If you've heard me this far, know that not all pain ends in tragedy. Sometimes it becomes a new pillow, clear path, ocean at peace. And there's still a detail you need to know, because when I came back from that trip, I found something at home. Something I didn't ask for. I didn't expect it. And that, even so, moved me in a way that no lawyer's letter or son's call ever could. Wanna know what it was? So, don't let go of my hand now, because the end of this story, keeps the most unexpected gesture of all. When I returned to St. Paul, the air seemed lighter, even with the autumn chill coming. The orange leaves covered the sidewalks, and my balcony was, as I left it, quiet, clean, and without other people's footsteps crossing my door without warning. It was a Friday when the phone rang. On the other side, Ryan's voice. Mom, we wanted to invite you to lunch on Sunday. At home, just the three of us. No restaurant. We cook. It took me a few seconds to answer, not because I was angry, but because I needed to listen again. Inside, they were going to cook. At home, invite me. And, above all, to ask if I wanted to, not to push me, not to demand me. Accepted. Take it easy, because now I didn't accept it in any hurry. On Sunday, I arrived at 1 p.m. Ryan opened the door with a shy smile and said, Dana was in the kitchen, in an apron, stirring a pot of sauce. The house smelled of homemade food, of care, and there were no more shouts of command. No last-minute rushing. Everything was in place, as if, for the first time, they really wanted to receive me, not use me. We sat at the table. There was roast chicken, plain rice, nay, aunt, lettuce salad with cherry tomatoes. Nothing exuberant, but every detail was a gesture. The plate Dana handed me. Ah, Ryan's question. Wines countio. Are you comfortable here? Mom? Anaya? Marsnai. Harji? Is there a shareholder yourself? The towel stretched out neatly. We don't talk about the past, nor of the will, nor the cards, only from the present. Wow. Of the small adjustments, of the changes, of the pains they taught. I ate slowly, paying attention not only to the taste, but to the silence around. It was a different silence from the one I experienced months ago. It was not a breakup, it was respectful, listening, how, of sincere pause. After breakfast, Dana came back from the kitchen with a beige envelope in her hands. He sat next to me and placed him on the table. Between the two of us, we, an emergency fund began. This is the proof of the first deposit. We did it together, with what was left at the end of the month. It's still little, but we want to show you. Not just saying that we are changing. I took the envelope. Nay, restored down. It was real. A simple deposit, but made with their sweat. For the first time, they were trying to build something that didn't go through my name. My sacrifice, my account. Lady, I looked at them. And he smiles. A sweet smile. Now, Pihar. Not euphoria. Of relief. Because I understood. Understood. Then, that maybe it was too late to go back to being what we once were. But maybe there was still time to write something new. Something that didn't need clauses, control, or charges. Something that started slowly, like Sunday lunch with home-cooked food. I got up from the table with a serene soul, thanked, and agradeced my Ancio Anacablo ice. Before leaving, ad audicia near Suckstown, I left a phrase in the air, just to see the wind carry. Respect begins when love ceases to be an obligation and becomes a choice. But, like everything in life, there was still one last piece to this puzzle. An unexpected gesture from someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who has watched me from afar for years. And now he was ready to speak. Want to know who knocked on my door the following week? So stay a little longer, because even my heart skipped a beat when I saw who it was. The week after lunch, they knocked on my door. It was my late husband's brother. Wow. Uncle Frank, who had lived in rural Wisconsin for years. A silent man, of few words, but with eyes that saw deeply. I heard what happened now, and I just wanted to tell you that I've always seen everything. You held this family with both hands, and now, Eudora, now, it is your turn to be sustained by your own peace. He handed me a letter from my husband, written decades ago but never sent. He said, "Please learn, among other things, that if I ever felt lonely, it was to remember that he always knew who I really was. the woman who carried everyone on her back without ever complaining. I closed the door with the letter on my chest and went to the mirror in the living room. I looked at myself there, my face worn out by time, but with my eyes lit, and I said in a low voice, I was good. I was silenced. Well, I was exploited. None. But when I stopped giving away what they didn't give back to me, I finally saw myself. Today, my house remains silent. No how. But it is no longer empty. She's full of me. My calm. Full of the choices I made myself. With firmness and tenderness, I still love my son. Yes, but not with the blindness of before. Now, unabandoned, my love has limits, and this does not diminish, it only strengthens. I learned that it is not a sin to stop saving those who do not want to be saved. That sometimes the greatest gesture of love is to allow the other to fall, so that they learn to get up with their own legs. The biggest lesson that life has left me is this: we don't need to wait for the end to start over. It doesn't matter how many years have passed, how many tears have flowed, or how many times they have said it was too late. It's never too late to value yourself. It is never too late to return the key to life itself into our hands. And it's never too early to say, I deserve peace. If you've stayed with me this far, now, thanks. From the heart, Miss down. Telling this story was more than an outburst. It was healing, and knowing that you have been on the other side, listening with an open heart, makes all the difference. A like on this video is like a hug that warms me up and shows me that I am not alone. And if you want to go back for another coffee, another conversation that we only have between those who have already felt it a lot, subscribes to the channel, Leo Count, and you. Here, there is always room for one more. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching. It will be beautiful to see how far this network of stories can go. And it activates the bell. One, wow. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.